right, this is a very small suffix and not one that we necessarily recognise as being a suffix very often, and we overcomplicate this for children a lot by getting them to remember these lists of rules. So I'm going to give you some really quick tips on this es suffix. So we have the es in two scenarios. So one of them is when we create a plural word. So we know that when we create a plural, the most common way is just to add the letter s in words like cats and dogs, for example. But another way to create a plural is with the es, and it's actually really simple to know when to do this. But the es also marks third person singular. So for example, let's say I match, so I match these two things together. He matches is the es at the end. Can you hear the difference? Okay. When we hear the z at the end of a word, we write es. Okay, so it's actually very easy. We don't need to teach children rules like if the word ends in x, add es. Because when a child goes to write words like boxes in a story, they don't think, I'm writing the word box plus I'm turning it into a plural to add es. They're just going to want to write boxes. So they're going to sound it out. And the great thing is that they can sound it out because it's b-ox, z. That's a schwa. Okay, let me highlight that one there for you. This is a schwa sound and this is the z. So this word, I don't like it when it does that. This word matches can be like a plural. I have a box of matches, or we played many matches, or it could be the child matches the pieces of puzzles together. So you can see that it can be a noun or a verb, but it doesn't matter in terms of spelling because it's going to be consistent. It's a, ch, z. And what we need to teach children is to listen out when you hear that z at the end of a word. It's going to be es. Same with boxes. B-ox, z. This is interesting. I put this in here because this is your third person singular. For example, I do, he does. This is why it's important to remember the meaning of the word. So this doesn't sound like it, but it's got the same spelling pattern. That's your third person singular. I go, he goes. That's why it's es. Just like I match, he matches. What's another word? I hatch, he hatches. It's that consistent third person singular es that we hear in a lot of words. Third person singular sometimes can just be an s, like I swim, he swims. But if we hear that is at the end, it's going to be es. But these two words actually follow this special little spelling pattern. So that's why they've got the es at the end of it. Okay, because it's grammatical. So I just chuck that one in there for good measure. So when we hear the is, we add es. Very easy. If the base word ends with a y, this e does not like to be next to a y. Okay, so I don't know why they don't get along, but we have to bring the I, because the I and the E, they're good mates. Okay, they're both just as bossy as each other, but we get rid of the Y in fly and we add the ES. Okay, cries is the same, skies is the same. So instead, one way we could do this is by saying, for example, fly plus ES, and we get the students to look at it and remember the Y and the E do not like to be next to each other. They are not friends. So we replace the Y with an E with an I, and then everyone gets along just fine. So same with cry plus es. The E and the Y do not get along, so we're going to change the I to a Y to add es. And the wonderful thing is for young students, these are quite simple words, they're easy to sound out, and all they have to remember is these bank of words that belong together. So flies, cries, skies, ties, for example. Now, if we go on to this list here, we have spaces, races, ages, cages. Again, you can hear the and the z at the end. Now you might say, but Veronica, the word space already has an E at the end. My argument is that these words are actually removing that silent E and then adding es, because we're giving this a new sound. Okay, so what I mean by that is, if I do this, space, right? Can you hear that in space, that E is, it's doing a job, right? But we can't hear it. It's a silent letter, okay? It's a busy letter, but it's not making any noise, okay? In spaces, suddenly it is making a sound. So it makes more sense to teach the consistent rule that when you hear the us, you're adding es. So spaces is space plus es, because we are listening out for that us sound, and we can't just chuck two e's next to each other, because that would not make, we can't do that when we add a suffix, and it would become spaces. So we have to get rid of this e before we add the es. Now, it doesn't really matter. It's not the end of the world. You're not going to break anyone if you just tell them to add the s. But my argument is if we are teaching them to listen out for that sound, it makes sense to put these in the same category. Okay? You don't have to, but it just, you can hear ages, us, cages, us. It's an extra sound that's in there. So that's one way of looking at it. All right, so when adding es, we have to listen for that sound, which is what we call the schwa. We remove silent e's at the end of the words, and we replace y's with i's, because e's and y's don't get along. So that's three very simple things to remember when learning about plurals and those third person singular vowels. Good luck.